What if I told you that the pain you're afraid of doesn't actually exist? In Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, there's one line that can shift your entire mindset. Tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. Most people never chase their dreams, not because they're weak, but because they've already suffered in their mind before taking a single step. This fear is the prison, and this video will show you how to break out of it. Welcome to Page Force, where we turn pages into power. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most powerful truths from The Alchemist, and how understanding it can completely change the way you face fear, pain, and purpose. The quote appears when Santiago, the protagonist, is close to giving up on his journey. He fears failure, loss, suffering, but the alchemist reminds him, fear is a liar. It creates suffering in advance, pain that hasn't happened yet. Our minds simulate the worst-case scenario, and we believe it's real. But when we actually go through the thing we feared, it's rarely as bad as we imagined. The fear was worse than the suffering, always. Think about how often this happens in your life. You don't start that project because you're afraid to fail. You don't speak your truth because you're afraid of being judged. You don't chase your dream because you're afraid of the unknown. And yet, every moment you choose fear, you suffer for nothing. Santiago could have stayed with his sheep, safe, but never fulfilled. You can choose safety too, but you'll never become who you were meant to be. The journey to your personal legend, your purpose, will involve pain, but not as much pain as regret. So how do you overcome this fear? It begins with a radical shift in perspective, not by pretending fear doesn't exist, but by understanding what it really is. Step 1. Recognize fear as an illusion of the mind. Fear is a protective mechanism. Your brain isn't trying to ruin your life, it's trying to keep you alive. But here's the problem. In a world where most threats aren't physical anymore, your brain still responds to fear like you're being chased by a lion. Starting a business, speaking on stage, following your dream, your brain treats those like life or death risks, even though they're not. So first, you must pause and realize that fear is just a story your brain is telling you, a what-if fantasy, not a fact. Step 2, ask yourself, is this pain guaranteed, or is it only imagined? Fear thrives in uncertainty, but pause and reflect. Is what you're afraid of actually happening right now? Or is it a simulation in your head? A movie your mind keeps replaying, even though the scene hasn't occurred? Most of the time, the answer is, no, the pain isn't real yet. It's imagined, pre-lived, and unnecessary. This one question, is this pain guaranteed, can interrupt the fear loop in your brain. Step 3, act anyway. This is the hardest and most powerful part. Fear never really disappears, but you can choose to act with it, rather than against it. That's what courage is. It's not the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else matters more. And that something is your personal legend, your purpose. Because the truth is, the only real suffering is living a life unlived. You weren't meant to stay stuck. You were meant to grow, and sometimes growth hurts. But fear hurts more when it wins, and regret hurts most of all. So take the step, even if it's small, because even the smallest act of courage is still victory over fear. Santiago faced everything he feared, loss, betrayal, even death. But he didn't run. He listened to the omens, followed his heart, and crossed the desert anyway. And in the end, he found the treasure, not just gold, but wisdom, purpose, and himself. Because the suffering he feared was never greater than the life he gained. The fear of suffering will always be worse than the suffering itself. So let me ask you, What would your life look like if you stopped fearing pain and started chasing purpose? If that made you pause, hit subscribe and share this with someone who's standing on the edge of their own legend.